Welcome to 3ds Max. This will be your first tutorial, and we're going to just go over some of the basics of 3ds Max. To start, up here we have our main toolbar, which is going to be where we use a lot of useful things. And over here is our command panel, which is another area where we use a lot of stuff. This panel over here is for a lot more advanced animation and drawing stuff, so we don't need to worry about that yet. But to start us off, we'll look at our transform tools, which are the most frequently used tools that we have. The select and move, the select and rotate, and the select and scale, and you can do different types of scaling like uniform, non-uniform, and this one is select and squash. So basically, those are our three main tools. I'll show you how they work once we start creating objects. A couple other tools that are important are snaps over here. This one is snap to grid, all three aspects on the grid points. Sometimes useful to get everything lined up. I don't use it that frequently, but it is sometimes useful. And you can do align with the angles and snap them to the angles, or a certain percentage. Just lots of little stuff that can be helpful, but it's not used that frequently. Another useful tool is the mirror and align tool, where you can take your objects and line them up or mirror them from each other or create a clone, and it's pretty useful. And the layer manager, which is a huge aspect of 3ds Max that can be very helpful. You can basically create different layers and have an object on this layer, an object on this layer, just like in Photoshop or in Flash development. So this is another large aspect. You don't have to use layers, but sometimes it can be helpful. Okay, so now to start creating some shapes. And this is where we go over to our command panel, where we'll start with the very first tab, which is the create tab, which is this one. And within the create tab we have geometry, shapes, lights, cameras, helpers, space warps, and systems, which are all these different things you can create, and some of them get pretty advanced, but we'll start with the geometry, which is pretty simple, boxes and cones and spheres and cylinders. That is for our standard primitives. We can also go to extended primitives and get a little bit different looking things like a hedra or a prism, and you can choose what kind of prism it is. For now, we'll just stick with standard primitives. To start off, we shall make a box. Pretty simple. What you're going to do, click on the box and click and drag, and this is going to define your first base. Get it to wherever you want, and let go of the mouse, and then drag, or just move actually, you don't have to drag, and this will define the height. And wherever you like it, click there and it'll be complete. If you don't like the color, it randomly assigns you a color by default. You click on this box here, and you can choose red or something, and if you don't like that and you end up making something else and you want to change it, you can go here to modify, and this is going to give you all the parameters of your box, like the length, the width, and the height, and you can change it to be smaller, larger, anything you change about it. And you can change the color again by going up here and clicking on whatever color you like. So that's a box for you. Pretty self-explanatory. A little more complex shape would be a cone. First you click and drag to define the base, then you move up to define the height, and then you click and move again in to define the second radius, where that's your most common cone, but you can make it look whatever you want it to look like. And same thing goes for any shapes. All the parameters will be in the Modify tab. We'll have the two radiuses and the height, and you can change that around. And the color, of course. For our next part, we'll look at just some of the basic shapes to make instead of geometry. It's a little less complicated, but you can make just a simple line, and you click and drag to define it, and then you click and move to curve it in whatever way you like, and click again to finish it. And you can click and keep going to create a object of sorts, and you can close it, and that's just a line. And it's pretty simple. You can use these to get a lot more detailed. I'm going to delete that, I don't like the way it looks. But you can also just do simple circles and just click and drag for that, or a donut, or you click and drag again, get a double, or lots of different things. That's a star. You can pick the number of points and all that stuff. So there are basic shapes. They're not going to be 3D, but sometimes you're going to need some 2D aspects, 2D shapes to use. Next, we will go to our lights, which is not really of a huge concern with us just yet, just because it's a lot more advanced. But this is where you can do your lights. I personally haven't really used them that much, so we'll leave that for a later date, and go next over to the cameras. For now, we're not really going to use cameras either, because we can just stick with the default kind of camera view here, and render from here. But if we really want a different view, and we want to create a new camera,